It was a day of diplomacy and dialogue in Tokyo. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and the new Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met for the high-stakes second in-person Quad summit in Tokyo. The agenda was simple: a free and open Indo-Pacific. A joint statement by the four nations avoided mentioning China directly, but there were no doubts about what their concerns were. Instead, it listed the range of activities Beijing has been accused of in the region, including sorties, naval exercises and encroachments by Chinese fishing vessels. Tuesday's meeting saw some new faces, including Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who took office last October, as well as for Australia's new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Albanese attended the summit just a day after he was sworn in. According to officials present at the summit, India was praised highly for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccines that New Delhi supplied to the world. The leaders also launched a maritime security partnership. This will allow member countries to monitor illegal fishing and track dark shipping. The Quad is essentially an alliance of democracies upholding common values. All four members have significant economic clout. They also have the world's most powerful militaries, and they have a common adversary in China. But what the Quad struggled with is defining its purpose. Is it a union of democracies? Is it an Asian NATO or an anti-China alliance? The Quad is 17 years old now, but since inception, it has maintained multiple identities. It remained dormant for years until the China threat pushed the allies to come together. This made this second in-person summit even more crucial. The Quad needs to define its purpose, and India could be a major driving force here. Well, this crucial Quad summit came to a close today, where all the four leaders in Australia, US, Japan and India came to a consensus. The agenda was simple: a free and open Indo-Pacific. A joint statement by the four nations avoided mentioning China directly, but there were no doubts about what their concerns were. Instead, it listed the range of activities Beijing has been accused of in the region, including sorties, naval exercises and encroachments by Chinese fishing vessels. Now, according to officials present at the summit, India was praised highly for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccines that New Delhi supplied to the world. The leaders also launched a maritime security partnership. This will allow member countries to monitor illegal fishing and track dark shipping. The Quad is essentially an alliance of democracies upholding common values. All four members have significant economic clout. They also have the world's most powerful militaries, and they have a common adversary in China. But what the Quad struggled with, and is still struggling with, is defining its purpose. Is it a union of democracies? Is it an Asian NATO or an anti-China alliance? The Quad is 17 years old now, but since inception, it has maintained multiple identities. It remained dormant for years until the China threat pushed the allies to come together. Well, for more insight on this story, our managing editor Parki Sharma is joining us live from the heart of all the action in Tokyo. Parki Sharma, good to see you and welcome to this broadcast. What are the big takeaways from this summit?
What are the big takeaways? I think all the leaders who attended the Quad summit, first of all, without naming China, they came together and declared initiatives that are supposed to counter China's expansionism in the region, especially the satellite tracking link that is going to check, or is expected to check, illegal fishing and dark ships by China. Remember, China is the biggest perpetrator of illegal fishing. It threatens livelihoods, and this is being seen as one way of the Chinese regime carrying forward their agenda of expansionism. So this was definitely a very important step in that direction to counter that. Apart from that, all the three leaders the president of the US, the new prime minister of Australia, and the prime minister of Japan lauded India's vaccine diplomacy and India's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, the US president is said to have, in his own informal comments, also said that India's response and success can be seen in contrast with China's failures and how democracies deliver where autocracies do not. So that was again a very important statement that came from all the leaders. They all welcomed the new Australian Prime Minister and some jokes were also cracked, and US President Biden said that because you've had such a hectic week, first the campaign, then the election, then winning it, swearing in, taking a flight all the way to Tokyo. So if you fall asleep here, that's okay. I think the Indian Prime Minister has also invited subsequently Prime Minister Albanese in his bilateral meeting. He's invited him to India at an early date. And a whole lot of other things were discussed, maritime security, climate action, supply chain resilience, and those are things that we've heard the Quad discuss in the past. Some experts saying that the language is stronger vis-a-vis China. Of course, Ukraine also came up, and US President Joe Biden said that this is a threat not just to Europe, and this is a war that concerns not just Europe but the rest of the world. India has not joined the Western sanctions regime, and I think now there is a clear understanding that all sides have agreed to disagree on this one, and that's okay, because they're looking at convergences rather than divergences, as they put it in diplomatics. So these were broadly the big highlights, Eric, from this summit, the Tokyo summit. Some others also saying that it's more of the same, and the Quad could have perhaps more clearly defined its security goals. What do they hope to achieve, and how are they going to do that if they're not even ready to name China? Right. How will they take on the threat called China? Also, not very much coming out in terms of where they stand on AUKUS.
Palki, let's talk more about this maritime security. Japan says Chinese and Russian fighter jets carried out joint flights over the Sea of Japan and East China Sea as leaders of the Quad bloc met in Tokyo. Some would call this a provocation. What's your take on that?
The Japanese certainly have called it a provocation and quote-unquote unacceptable. That's how Japan has put it. They have condemned this joint exercise. First, let me share with our viewers the details of what we know. This was a 13-hour-long air patrol in the Indo-Pacific. Russian Tu-95 strategic missile carriers and Chinese Hun-6K strategic bombers conducted these patrols along with the Russian Su-30s missiles. So this was a 13-hour operation. They flew over the Sea of Japan. And this is something that American and Japanese officials have confirmed to the press. Japan's defense minister has since spoken about it, Nobuo Kishi, and he has expressed quote-unquote grave concerns over these flights. This is being seen as a provocation, and rightly so, I think. But this is also posturing on the part of Beijing and Moscow, because both these countries felt that they were the targets of this meeting. And that puts India in a bit of a tricky situation, because India's relationship with Russia is complex, it's old. Russia remains a strategic partner. And very interestingly, this morning, one of the local papers had an opinion piece that said that the world should understand that they should not see India as an ally. They should only see India as a partner, because India very fiercely guards its non-aligned status. So India has been able to set the record straight on where it stands on all these issues. But certainly this air patrol does make the day more dramatic, should I say, and the Japanese certainly not very happy, and the statements are still pouring in on how they've responded to this.
Live from Tokyo, Japan, WION's managing editor, Palki Sharma, thank you. See you on Gravitas. Tomohiko Taniguchi, who is a former special advisor to the cabinet of Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, is also joining us live from Tokyo. Mr. Tomohiko, welcome to WION.
My surname is not Tomohiko, that's Taniguchi.
Okay, Taniguchi, welcome to WION. Japan's vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific was highlighted in the forum. Why is advancing diplomacy through the Quad matter to Tokyo?
Because it matters. We are in a long game vis-a-vis China. Chinese phenomenal growth is going to continue as is for the time being, at least for another decade or so. And China's benchmark year is going to be 2049, the centenary year since the establishment of People's Republic of China. Between now and 2049, the Chinese leaders are determined to bring back Taiwan at all cost. When that happens is a question, but it is no longer a question whether or not it's going to happen. It's going to happen, as was expressed and pronounced a number of times by Xi Jinping and other leaders of China. So it's important for maritime democratic nations such as India, Australia, Japan, and the United States to always showcase to the Chinese that we are here united. So that's a political message that needs to be struck each and every time.
Mr. Taniguchi, let me ask you this. The mandate of the Quad grouping has been in question for a while now. How effective can this group be if their main objective has been to counter China and not having a common stand when it comes to addressing the war in Ukraine?
Oh, right. I think there needs to be better understanding of the position of India. India's military has been dependent on ammunition and supply parts that have been provided by Russia. So I would urge Indian leaders to be straightforward in telling the rest of Quad member nations of the importance of their maintaining ties with Russia. But when it comes to democratic credentials, there is no question. I don't think there is any doubt hovered by the three leaders of Quad nations of the democratic credentials of India. And so India, as a democratic maritime nation, is fully entitled to further cooperating with countries such as Australia, Japan, and the United States.
Mr. Taniguchi, thank you very much for making time and for talking to WION today.
You're welcome.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.